The Autofill external module is a tool designed for REDCap by our esteemed community collaborator, contributor, and developer, Gunta Resnichik, to enhance data entry by automatically filling empty fields with user predefined values. For today's demonstration, I will show you how to enable, configure, and implement the Autofill external module action tags, and start with some key points here. Let me just expand my screen a little. So the most recent update to this module was in April of this year, and that's one of the main reasons I chose it. But as we can see, over time has progressed, there's been some bug fixes and other things occurring within the module. The change log that I was displaying, it lists just basically the updates, bug fixes, including compatibility improvements and additional action tag functionalities. Some of the requirements, the basic requirement, or the only requirement, well, not exactly the only requirement, but the basic requirement fundamentally is to have greater than version 12. We are currently on 15.4, so we shouldn't have any trouble using that module within our instance of REDCap. For installation, I'm going to walk you through the installation here. I'd like to look at first enabling the module. So to enable the module, we have to, well, first you have to have, as a user, you would have to have the appropriate designations within your user account. So let me just adjust this here again. So within the user rights, which is located on your left user pane toolbar, you have project design and setup. And I think that's the only other requirement is just having the user requirement. Somebody with full access and user right full access would have to assign those project designs and setups to be able to access the module, or any module for that matter. The autofill action tags are as follows. Autofill value specifies the default values for fields. Autofill form and autofill survey places autofill widgets, so designating placement for a widget within forms or surveys. The autofill form on save and at autofill survey on save function similarly, where again it's placement within the designated area, whether it's a form or a survey where you want the widget to be displayed. And then the autofill form on load and autofill survey on load can be embedded within the widget or as a widget. And then we have an auto tab and at auto focus. For the auto tab, it moves focus to the next field when a drop down value changes. And that's exclusive to the drop down and only the drop down. The next focus will move focus to a specific element when a field loses focus. So back to enabling the module, we'll go ahead and access our external modules, manage link. We'll enable a module. We'll search for our module. And since we're in the A's, I just want to show the search, but nevertheless, you can just scroll through the list as well. Since we're in the A's, we can see it here. But um, to expedite. We'll run a search, see our exclusive and specific module. We have the ability to view documentation, and first we'll enable the module. Now that it's enabled, we can run our configuration. And since this has already been within the project that I'm using, the configuration's already checked. So here we have English, but if we read our instructions for it, we can leave it blank and use default settings at our system level. And then we have the ability to hide this module from non-admins. I've never been able to determine whether this is a non-admin in a project level or at a system level.
All right, I'm
But
sorry, let me interrupt 1 second.
sure.
So I determined these configurations. There are some external modules which allow you to configure this or require you even to configure how you want them to work. Like if you were to use the REDCap JavaScript or CSS external module, you would need to add text, check boxes. I mean, there's a lot of modules that do this, but there are some that just require me to check a couple boxes, and one of which would be hide this module from non-admins. And it's something that sometimes I check and sometimes I don't. It depends on this. I'm a little surprised. I'm not sure that you see it normally. Maybe you do. I'm not sure if Michael sees it because he's an administrator, but one way or another, these are pre-done by me when I add a module to REDCap. So I wouldn't get too lost in the weeds on filling this stuff out.
Okay.
But the language file would be important if you were using a different language on the project.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Smith. So this, looking at the other configuration settings, the output debug information to the browser console. That's when we can select this here. We can run and inspect, and this is the console we're referring to. So
Yeah, and let's not get caught up in this if that's all right with you.
that's fine with me. That's fine with me. That was a big part of. It was a big part of making some of the determinations for some of the syntax for the action tags.
Yeah,
But yeah,
these are things that are really more on an administrator level, so we can see if there's an error, what the problem was. It wouldn't help the user very much because of the error messages that come up. So
okay, okay,
you can leave this whole configuration thing alone unless
okay,
you need to change the language file.
okay. The other one here, you said you can leave it all blank, but the other one, it actually displays, if I'm correct, I believe it displays a pop-up window within exactly the data entry or survey page. So you can see, and that's part of the presentation, is to be able to see the error as it occurs. But the important thing is to shut it off once you move the project into production or start collecting data so that doesn't occur. So, or maybe we can make that distinction because I'm not sure if that I I had it unchecked, so I'm wondering whether that's within the memory of the console and within the back end. But nevertheless, we'll take a look at the pop-up windows that occur. So I'm going to keep that checked, and then I'll run a save on that. And then I'm going to go back here. Here I'm in a survey. What I have that I've built for this, some of the when we look at a field, So when we look at a field, and I just want to show you the annotation for the field, and where the action tag is actually placed. So up here, we can look at the record ID, and we can see a button here for action tags. When we click on that button, we get a list, and you can see now that we have a new, this list comes as a default, so we can see now that this has been included into our previously default list. And here are the explanations and the syntax examples for setting up the form. And here we can see autofill form on load, autofill form on save, autofill survey on load, autofill survey on save, and an autofill value. What tripped me up about this and to start was that the placement in the documentation is arranged differently. And so in reading it, you would read from the top down, and you would think that it would be a stepwise process in that manner. But what's displayed first is the autofill value. Anyhow, the auto tab is another feature, an action tag that was appended. And then we have the rest of our action tags that are included as a default. I'll go ahead and close out of that. And then I want to take you back to the fields that are not supported. Here you can see the calculated field. And this is just, I'm just annotating here within my label. And then I also tried the action tag within the annotation because the annotation is available. I want to see what occurs. And then it throws an error to the right and displays an error code. It is a link and it opens up a new page. We'll see that later. So this here, again, these are the fields that are the field types that are not actually supported within those action tags. So one of the things that I did with a descriptive text, although is I embedded one of the autofill forms and autofill survey widgets within a descriptive field, and that is supported. But the autofill value as it stands, or any of the other action tags for the autofill, are not supported. I'm going to go over here to the survey, and you can see here some documentation. This is just some documentation. I use this as a way to navigate the documents rather than scrolling back and flipping through multiple pages as I go through the processing and figuring of the action tag or the modules. Just embedded in a survey where it's accessible to me or any user for that matter, as it would be and then applied. So this is also something that I pulled from our list. So I have a complete list displayed here within the survey. Not that it pertains to the action tag itself, but it's just a crutch for myself. And then here I have an autofill form. I have an autofill form label. And so if you notice, I'm going to take you back to that field. And here within this label, actually, let's go to the dashboard. So when we go to the dashboard and we look at that specific field, you can see, and this is between the survey display and the form display. So here we're seeing autofill form, and here's our placement of the widget. And that's separated by this faint line that you can see here and here. So that's That's its boxer, and that's where it's designated. And for the autofill survey, we're not seeing that same widget. But when we go to our survey, it'll be displayed. So here in our survey, our autofill survey is displayed. I can run that and it'll fill in the data. So what I did was I took each respective field type and validation to test it and to work with it. So this is here we're seeing that I didn't run a designation or validation for it. And what I did was within the field annotation, I entered add autofill dash value and equals and my date. So what that is pretty much just text. So we're looking at a text, and even though it doesn't have a designation, the same will apply across all date types. And so rather than going to each one of them, I just want to show you that the formatting is correct. And we're looking at if the formatting is incorrect, we'll get an error. So upon save or submit. So here we have the respective month, day, year format, year, month, day, and then we have the ability to run timestamps. Here I'm using a 24-hour time, but it will also support, since it is a like a JSON type text syntax, it will support standard time. And then when we look at, so essentially it's a JSON string is what I see it as. And then we have other validations. Here we have an email. It'll support text. Um, if it is incorrect, it will depict that and it will display that error. Here we have the autofill value 3.14. I'm using just an integer. And for MRN, we have 10 digits, a 10-digit format. That's a field setting at the system level that can be applied. And then we have a generic. I'm not sure. I think generic is just um, any quantity or amount of numbers. So if we run more numbers, I think it will support it. I didn't test that. And then as a number, any number will display. A number with decimal, again, will display. Within our validation types, I think we go up to 4 decimals, between 1 to 4 decimals, or no decimals. And then I didn't change that. So this is just a phone number. I'm using a number. It's a US phone number type. And then I have the social security number for validation here. And it'll support your 6-digit formatting for that as well and depict any errors if that occurs. And then time as well. So this is a time designation, which is displayed with an icon. And then we have zip code, and then our yes, no, true or false, and then a visual analog. And these are all populated once I click that widget. So I clicked it earlier, and that's why they're already populated. I'm not sure if we missed that or not, but this is a multiple choice single answer radio button. Same thing would apply. Here I'm using, so if we distinguish what a value is versus a field value. So when we have in our form, we can look at that specific field, or if any field for that matter, we can look at, or let me just click out of that. I'm going to go back over to a radio button. I think it was this one. Clean that up. And so here I have my designations. Expand this. Yes, no, to for clear, and then text. So I use text for true, and REDCap will support that. So that's important to distinguish. And if you notice, if we look at the, if we look at the populated field within the survey or the data collection instrument, you're going to see that it's not all caps, and it'll be um, standard or normal text. So if we use any one of these other values, same thing would apply. It would work, and you would get your value label. So I hope I was clear with that. And then we have here we have a field type drop down, and this drop down will support is the only field that will actually support the auto tab or next focus. Here I have the syntax. So if I include the at auto tab field, and we can see what that does. Just go ahead and update that, and we'll come back to that later. But that's include that, and then check boxes are a special case requiring a different syntax. So when we're looking at the syntax here, we're going to see pretty straightforward. I have an autofill form on load and then an autofill value, which is 1, 3, and 5. So I'll go ahead and cancel out of that, back out of that. One thing that the module doesn't discuss or have any indication of is matrix, whether it supports it or not. So I tried that. And here we have my, so here's our field annotation. I applied it here, although the thing with this is that as an admin, we can get into the weeds, as you said, Mr. Terry Smith, that we can get into the weeds with it, with the autofill that we have as admin. And then it's not to be confused with the autofill module. So they'll do completely separate things, and the whatever you have designated will be overwritten by the autofill. So we can go back up, and then it'll support a dynamic query. These are fields available to users upon request to an admin. They are not freely available as your standard normal user. I just put in an autofill value to support that. And then we have, I'm going to go back over here. So within the survey, so I'm back here in the survey. Wait a minute. Excuse me. I'm in the data collection instrument. What I'll do here is I'm going to test that. So here the autofill, automatically it picked up the incorrect value and it's saying paper. So that's, so we do have our syntax applied, but it's pulling an error or an alert rather. So we'll close out of that. We're going to erase it. And I'm just going to include I'm not sure why that didn't. Here's another one. We'll close that. And there's one more. So there's, and I think that comes down to, actually, this is, oh, it applied paper within that field as well. So let me just take it back to the top. And here, what I did was I used the autofill form. So we're seeing the autofill form again. The autofill survey is not displayed again. And then here I have both. So I'm using the autofill form and the autofill survey. And so with that, I can use this widget. This is where it's placed. I can use it, fill in the values. And here we can see that it didn't override these values here. So you can see some of the nuances that can apply if not all of the appropriate syntax is used. So I'm using just a pretty simple or shorter type syntax. Um, but what I'm going to do here is I applied a widget to an embedded field. I embedded it. So this is actually a descriptive type field. And I'll get into more of what the groups are. So here I have group one and then form, group two, and then survey. Here you can see I have group and two. So this will operate and clear all fields. So part of the module is it has, I think, what are called extended parameters. And these are some of the extended parameters, one being before and one being after within this display. And then I also modified the text and color for the display of the button. And here we can reset that. And since this is designated with a group, I can see that my syntax worked for overriding the text box validation. So this was the autofill text that I included within the syntax in the field annotation. So it was overwritten with my syntax here and that it is true. And same thing applies for this field. The only thing different here is I use an at default value to apply and use that in conjunction with our autofill. So the um, string of text that I applied was text box validation and then none, similar to what we see in our interface. And then here, um, this is the value that is being applied once I click the widget. So here I'm going to clear that again, and I'm going to autofill on this side. And you can see that with the at default, since we know how at default works, it won't display until the following instrument. Is this correct?
It
Yes.
depends on what you're doing with a default.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, anybody can answer. Yeah. So that's yeah, so what I did was and here you're just seeing I'm using the descriptive pop-ups here. Um, at the onset just to be able to see some of the annotation as I was working through and reading on it. This is let me see here. We have so again, so the at default it's blank and it didn't populate and not until we see our overwrite. And then here again. So that's working okay. And then we have one other field I didn't describe was a field type was notes for notes. A note text box. It'll support lines of text and can be applied for whatever we want. So one of the questions that I have encountered from team members is that um, how can this be applied in a study? So how can this be applied in a study or what are some examples? And to me, I see that as more of a user type thing. And you know, this is just the way the action tag functions, but that's a case by case use. And but one of the things is it can be a lot more efficient in data collection instrument, I think, for admin type settings where repetitive documents are being used and need to be supported and filled and or signed. So maybe the signature field can be listed beneath some of the fields that are including the autofill value. action tag. Do you guys have any other ideas?
Anybody?
Nothing. That's fine. And
Not really.
okay. And so that's for the most part the majority of the module. Now we had in the survey we have the similar fields, and I included it both in the survey again. So that's here. One other thing. So I think at the bottom here, I'm using a slider. So I'm not sure why this didn't populate. I selected that parameter for displaying the value. I set a value in the autofill. I'm not sure if that's actually a bug. If we go into the instrument and scroll down to the field. So here we have display a number value. I selected that, and so that didn't, and I have 10 displayed, so that you saw that the slider was all the way over to 10, but although it doesn't display. So I
Have
saw
you,
there's some nuances with this module,
Mi-
either by
Michael,
user or yeah, go ahead, Carol.
I was wondering if that's actually the negative 10, 0, and 10, or if it's actually that value. Did you save that record?
We still have it open, so we can go back there and you can see that it's 10. Okay, it's here in the instrument, right? But in the survey,
Yeah, it might not. Maybe it doesn't work in a survey. I've not tried that specifically.
yeah. So there again, there's just a lot of nuances. So the other two um, features, I could see how I could use this in multiple projects that I'm working on, but it's one of those things where I would keep it a lot more linear than what we have here. But nevertheless, this is um, the module to streamline your data entry and improve your user efficiency. I didn't cover the next focus on any of the fields, but again, that works in conjunction with and I didn't see exactly how that works, so I'm still working on that. I didn't see exactly how that works, but I know I used it within the drop down. So there's a drop down field. Where my drop down? So here, single answer. And again, I have the auto tab and next focus. So I'm still working on those. Those are gaps in my research, but that's in essence what I had to demonstrate today. I hope that this would be useful to streamline REDCap project data and entry for users and improve user efficiency. Any questions?